agreed that digitisation is the key to the future of collections, that more and more people expect things to be online, and as somebody said, there's a danger that if it's not online, people will just think it doesn't exist. And so increasingly, that really is the way everyone has to go. But a number of people raised the issue of copyright and the problems of that, both in terms of from a museum point of view, that obviously licensing images of objects and so on is one of the few ways they have of generating income. But at the same time, researchers, of course, want to be able to get an image off a website and then just use it in whatever way they want. They don't have to worry about copyright restrictions and so on. So those are kind of interesting issues that still, I think, need to be resolved. And finally, more digitised records are needed. There was awareness that obviously, even at the end of this project, still not everything is actually available online. There's a lot more to be done. And different people actually had different ideas of what should be the priorities for that. Some people thought that images would be the top documentation element to improve. Some people said prioritise collection descriptions and object records. The visual is expendable, though wonderful. And I guess that to a certain extent depends on what kind of field it is you're in. Obviously, if you're an art researcher, then the images are fairly crucial. Maybe if you're in natural sciences, it's less important. So ultimately, the project generated over 1,700 collection level descriptions, and over 15,000 new item records were created as part of the project. I'm also slightly disappointed about showing this slide because I've based this PowerPoint on one that Neil Curtis from Aberdeen gave in previous talks, and he's put down the sort of initial proposals that we all came up with, and the University of Dundee is the only one that seems to have not fulfilled its proposals, but that's because we were really ambitious, whereas everybody else said like nothing, and of course it looks really good when they've done loads. These proposals we had to come up with completely randomly, actually before we applied for the money, to say here's the kind of thing we might want to do. And of course I don't think any of us had any idea what we might be able to achieve through the project. And I was being ludicrously ambitious, and other people weren't. So there you go. I learned from my mistakes there. But as you see, that hardly ever do the actual proposals match up with the delivery. We just really didn't know what we were going to be able to do here. So, for those of you that haven't seen it, which I suspect is probably most of you, this is the UMIS portal at umis.ac.uk/revealing, and there's a sort of simple search box, but also more advanced search as well. And you can search either collection level descriptions or items or both. And also you can search for specific collections as well as from everybody's collection. So, for example, we do a search for Amsterdam. We get a number of records. Some of them, as you'll see, have images. Some of them don't. We can go into one. We get a particular object. In this case, this is one of the Hunterians, and because they have they were, I think, the only university already to have a form of online database that actually has a link to their own online system as well. But obviously most people didn't have that. But as we said, what we wanted to do was not rely on this portal because, as Mungo rightly said, actually, if you don't know about it, you're never going to be able to find anything on it. So the number of people that actually go through that portal is indeed pretty minimal. But because the data is all on Culture Grid, actually a lot more people are able to search for it on that. And so here's the same record that appears on Culture Grid. And the great thing about Culture Grid is that it's actually Googleable, and that, of course, is vitally important for students who don't actually know to look at beyond anything except Google. So that's really, really useful, I think. Now, I think looking back, there were a number of kind of problems and things that still kind of frustrate us to this day. One of the big things, of course, was the inconsistency of data, that even though every different museum, we're all cataloguing things according to the museum standard spectrum. Actually, we all do it slightly differently, and the different databases we use all record the data slightly differently, and we all had to sort of pick, well, here's the particular field from our database that matches this field on the sort of big generic database, and inevitably it doesn't quite work, and so some things don't quite give you the information that you want, and so on. And that's really frustrating, but I'm not really sure how you could actually deal with that. We all had problems dealing with our IT people. The biggest problem was at Glasgow School of Art, whose IT people simply couldn't get the data to go at all. And in fact, we actually had to launch the project claiming that everybody's data was on, but actually there was no data from Glasgow School of Art on there. And I think it was about a year after the end of the project that theirs finally actually came up. But it is on now, which is really good. Our real frustration is that we couldn't link the collection level descriptions to the item records. So you could look for, somebody's butterfly collection, but if you then wanted to see the individual butterflies, you actually had to then go back and search for them again, which is really frustrating. But again, in the time we had available, we just couldn't do it. The searchability on the site is not great. Part of that is, again, due to this problem that we were trying to be as consistent as possible, but you can only do that so far, and so we were fairly limited in the fields that we chose to do. But still, there are issues like the actual main search box, which you think might search everything, only searches description and keywords and not, for example, maker's name. So if you're looking for a particular artist, it's rubbish. We never got the individual search boxes on individual museum sites. That was just too complicated. I've already mentioned that there is a general lack of awareness of the portal itself, so very few people come through that. But as I say, as long as it's on Culture Grid and as long as Culture Grid is still useful, that's not necessarily a problem. But there has been a big problem with updating as well. Most of the universities were able to use a harvesting mechanism which automatically draws the data from their existing database onto the site. And that's fine, that just hopefully keeps working. But a number of the members couldn't do that for various technical reasons, and we had to kind of basically send a set of data out there. And the system that we use to do that basically doesn't work anymore, so we can't update that. And well, a number of us have actually changed databases, and so we couldn't do that harvesting thing anyway. So there's a big issue. I know, in fact, just on Monday, actually, Peter Trulls, the curator at Glasgow School of Art, emailed round the members saying, how do we update our collections data, because obviously they've lost so much in the fire, and that all that data is still up there. They really need to change it urgently, and we don't actually know at the moment how they can do that. However, in broad terms, the data, the project was a great success. We were, working together on a really ambitious project. We succeeded in getting collections up there, even imperfectly, which most of us had never been able to do before. And what was particularly key was that because the Scottish Funding Council were really pleased with what we'd done, when they then came to reviewing their university museum funding stream, they actually gave us more money and actually massively expanded the number of different university museums that get direct funding from the Funding Council. So that was a huge success, and we are now looking at another joint project on a similar kind of scale. So that's been a really good learning curve. So there is a published report about the project. Unfortunately, I only have the one copy, but if anyone's interested, I can email you a PDF. Just email me and I can easily send that to you. But if you have any more technical questions, then Neil at Aberdeen is probably far better to direct them to. So I'll end there. Thank you.